Okay, for today's WIMBA session, I just want to cover week 11 for April 7th that I released to you on Wednesday. And there were two assignments. Really, one is a project. You have the red envelope project is the first thing that you'll be working on, and there is an assignment, create nav bars. And what I would like to do is neglect to even cover creating nav bars this week. You can experiment with the links below that I've given you for creating nav bars, but I'm not going to have that assignment where you have to work on it this week, but I will be assigning it next week, and I may have some additional information to add to it. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure yet. I just want to look at it again. Navigation bars are very important, and they're troublesome if you don't know how to create them, so I want to give you some additional information on how to create navigation bars. And what I've listed down here is 5 different methods, and the last 2 really are kind of the same. They're via use of JavaScript, creating navigation bars via use of JavaScript, cascading style sheet code, and CSS. So those we'll talk about next week. Today I just want to cover the red envelope project, and I'd like to try and be a little more succinct than I usually am. And I'm going to do my best to keep this closer to an hour rather than 2 hours like we normally do. Now, I can't see any questions right now. You can go ahead and post them, but I have that little chat area minimized. So post your questions and I'll get to them when I break. So we will start by looking at the example red envelope project. This example is nothing more than an image. So I provided you this image, and this is basically what your red envelope project should look like when you're done. So just take a look at it for a minute. Just look at it. Look at all the different areas of it. And by the way, this project is only 1 page. So do your best on this. We don't have a full-fledged website that we're dealing with. We're just designing 1 page. Now, take what you know from cascading style sheets and writing cascading style sheet code and start to imagine how you might build this page. How would you do this header section at the top? How would you do this menu where it says occasion, recipient, shops, catalog, business gifts? How would you get this little image of a gift box into your page? How would you do these items right here that are in red where it says my account, customer services, shopping bag? And what's this down here? It's a little search area. Now, what I do not expect is for anybody to have a real search area here. What you can do is you can insert a form, place a form here with the go button, and that would work, or you can do it with an image. I'm going to leave that up to you, and in fact, I'm not going to cover that today. What I will do is just cover the basics of the tutorial, and then I'm going to let you work on it a little bit. And as I get questions, and I hope I do, I hope I get emails or calls during the week, if there are a couple of people that are struggling with the same thing, what I'd like to do is perhaps release another WIMBA recording that will show them how to solve that common problem that you're having. And I may offer, outside of today, another WIMBA solution for this little search area as well. Okay, so it won't be covered today. We're just going to look at the tutorial. In the tutorial, we'll show you how to create all of these giant boxes that you see with colors and images in them. You can see that we have a left navigation, and then we have this main area, main content area on the right. And within that main content area, you're going to get really, really used to the idea of nesting something called layers. They're also called AP divisions, absolutely placed divisions. So let me explain what that means. A layer. and we've talked about this before, but it's not something that we've really worked with. But a layer in Dreamweaver, in the old Dreamweaver, a layer was an absolutely positioned division. What does that mean? That means that you're taking a division and you're placing it absolutely where you want it to be on the page. Okay? Why do I say absolutely positioned? Because that is the property in CSS. Position, absolute. Okay? So you absolutely position it, or you just position it exactly what you want. And there are two ways that you can do that. There are two properties that you need that work in conjunction with the position property, and they are left and top. How far over to the left do you want to position it, and how far down from the top do you want to position it? And we're talking about layers or divisions. Where do you want to position your division? Okay, but a layer is nothing more than an absolutely positioned division. So you're going to be able to take, through Dreamweaver's interface, a layer and move it around on your page wherever you want it to go. Not only can you do that with the mouse, you could also, through the interface, over on the CSS Styles panel, position it with numbers. And you'll be doing a lot of that in this tutorial. So there are just a lot of different boxes, and if you can imagine each one of these boxes being its own layer, its own division, there you go. Another thing I will not expect you to have done is this area at the bottom. There's an area down here that says sign up for email with a little email entry form. You don't have to do all of this business down at the bottom. I just want everything above it completed for this project. Now, in the tutorial, I'm going to show you how to lay this entire page out. What you'll be responsible for is all of the text. Okay, all of the text and making it look like this page. So let's get started. This is due on 4/21. I don't think it's a terribly difficult project. It just makes use of you knowing the box model again and knowing how to work with the list. And here's how we get started. We follow the RedEnvelope tutorial. And here again is the example. What I've done for you is after you complete this tutorial, I have linked to, let me open this up, things like how to do background images for bullets. You might need that. This is a tutorial that we've already completed. Here's another one. Remember this? Simple CSS rollover list. If I click through, we had all of these different types of lists that we created. Here's a rollover list. If we did all steps combined, we ended up with a product that looked like this. You can take this tutorial and you can modify it and use it in your RedEnvelope project. Okay, so there are 4 tutorials that have to do with lists that I've linked to. Now, one thing that we need to do is, let me cancel that, I apologize. We need to grab, before you get started with this tutorial, all of these images. And I'm just going to grab a few and save them wherever I need them. And I can do that by right-clicking and doing a Save Target As. And I will put them in my site. And I'm going to call this RedEnvelope. I'm going to create an images folder. And I'll save it there. I'm going to grab the background and save it. I'm going to grab this bat picture and save it. Cookies. Save it. Gift box. Save it. Pink necklace, I probably want. Okay. So I have a few images just for my example today, and I'm going to proceed to step 2. In Dreamweaver, we can do something called tracing images. And what I want you to think about is onion skin. Remember when you were a kid and you used to want to trace something that was really cool, a piece of artwork that someone else had done? One of the ways that you could do that is put a piece of onion skin paper over that drawing, and then you could see through that onion skin paper and you could trace on it, and then you'd have a drawing of your own. So it's the same type of idea, and you have something called a tracing image. And let's see how that would work in Dreamweaver. Resize here. I'm creating a new page here. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Oops. File save as. And where's my sandbox that I created? Well, I hope y'all were paying attention out there. It is RedEnvelope. I thought I created a sandbox, but I didn't. I created a RedEnvelope folder. And under this, you could call it RedEnvelope, or what would be another good name for it? Maybe index.htm. Okay, but just for me, I'm going to call it RedEnvelope.htm. So I got my page saved, and I'm going to go to the Modify menu and select Page Properties. In Page Properties, if I look in the categories, there's something called a tracing image. And over here on the right, I'm going to browse for a tracing image. And one of the images that I downloaded was a background.gif. And that's the one that I want. And if you look at the preview on the right-hand side, you can see, yeah, that's a picture of the RedEnvelope website that we're going to be building. Now, I want you to imagine when you're looking at that picture, you're probably thinking, why are we doing it this way? What are we doing? Where are we going? You need to look at the story that I put on the first page of the RedEnvelope tutorial, or actually on the assignment itself in eCampus, and it gives you the story. And you have to imagine that you're working in an area or a division where you're the web designer. Someone from sales has already talked to a client. They've already worked out the price, and they've come up, the artistic representation has been done by graphic illustrators, and that's what you're looking at here. All right, your graphic artists in your group have already gone to the client with this layout, and now you have to duplicate it. You have to create it instead of as an image, as a web page. And that's what you're involved in here. So I'm going to take their graphic artist rendering that they've gotten okayed by the client and use it as a background tracing image. So we're going to kind of build off of their rough idea and make it into a web page. So hit OK. And one of the things that I like to do, and this is totally arbitrary, the number, but on a tracing image, you don't want it to bleed through 100%. You kind of want it to be transparent so that you can see things that you put on top of it and that they have more color. You want it to look like a tracing image. So I adjust the transparency to about 25%. Maybe 20 works better for you, maybe 30. It's just your personal preference. I'm going to go ahead and apply this. If I move this page properties dialog out of the way, you can see behind the scenes that there is now an image that looks like it's kind of washed. It's faded in the background. That's your tracing image. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm ready to start moving to the next step. And by the way, this tracing image, if you were to hit F12 preview, you're not going to see this come up in the browser. Dreamweaver will write out attributes that will show this image here only in Dreamweaver. Only Dreamweaver will recognize it, but a browser won't. So anybody that's looking at your page, you could leave this tracing image here. Doesn't matter. It's only going to show up in Dreamweaver. It won't be there in the end product for the end user to see when they're previewing or viewing your page live. Let's go to step 3. Step 3 talks about adding layers to a page. Now I want to cover this. There's a very, very, very important step. It's number 1, where we go into the edit preferences. We go to the layers category, and we make sure that there's this little checkbox that says nest when creating with a layer. It needs to be checked. So let's look at that. Let's see where that is right now. Back in Dreamweaver, edit, preferences, and we need to find something called layers. Well, you'll notice in this version of Dreamweaver, CS4 that I'm running, there isn't anything called a layer. So let's talk about that real quick. There's something called AP elements, and I told you just a minute ago that layers are nothing more than absolutely positioned divisions. Okay, so AP stands for absolutely positioned elements. What I'm saying here is, if you're looking at an older version of Dreamweaver, you may see layers here in the category list. However, in these newer versions, it's AP elements. That's what I'm going to choose. This is one thing that differs in the tutorial that you might need to be aware of. AP elements. So when I choose this category, I see a checkbox here that says nesting. Nest when created within an AP or an absolutely positioned division. I want to make sure that that box is checked. And I'm done. So I hit OK. With that box checked, I can come up to my little layout tab. Okay, I have all these tools along the top. Let's talk about this real quick. Usually when Dreamweaver comes up, I have this common set of tools. Well, here's a layout set of tools. So I choose the layout tab. And look here, draw an AP div. That's what we used to call a layer. It looks the same in previous versions of Dreamweaver. It's found in a similar place. But here it's not called a layer, it's called an AP division. And if you move over it, and I know you can't see this when you're viewing the tutorial, this tutorial that I'm doing online in the Limba session, but you'll get a tooltip that says Draw AP Div. I'm going to click on that. And now, instead of just inserting divisions in my page, I can draw them. So I'm going to click and draw a division. Alright, this is a little different way than we've worked before. Well, let me go back to the tutorial, and I'll show you what we're trying to draw. There's an image down here at the bottom, and we're going to end up drawing just a bunch of these absolutely positioned divisions so that we can stuff content in them later. Okay, I'm going to stop drawing right now. I just wanted you to see where the tools are and what it'll do. Let's go to step 4. And let's talk about this idea of a layers panel. And in this version of Dreamweaver, again, it's not called layers, it's called AP elements. Here it is over next to the CSS styles panel, AP elements. If you don't see it there, there's a place that I've always told you that you can find all of these little dialogues, these little tabs, and it's under the window menu, and here it is. If you're looking for something called layers in a previous version of Dreamweaver, look under window, but in this version, CS4, it's called AP elements. That's what we want. And I want you to look here, and you can see that when I click on this AP element, that in my design view, that's what gets highlighted. So let's add another AP div inside of it, right there. And let's see what happened over here on the right. Remember that checkbox when we went into Edit Preferences? Well, that's what nesting is. It says, when I create a division inside of another division, make sure it's inside of that division. Nest it inside, in other words. Don't create it outside or a separate line of code. Okay, let's look at the code, and I'll show you what it's doing in the code. Here's your first division. It opens. Here's where it closes. And inside of it, there's another division. That is nesting, when you place one thing inside of another. So there's just a quick orientation to the AP Elements tab. In step 5, I want to introduce you to the Property Inspector and the way it's going to look and some of the properties that you'll be dealing with when you're creating and modifying absolutely positioned elements. So back in Dreamweaver, I have this absolutely positioned element selected. And look at what I can do. I can move it around. And what do you think is happening when I move it around? Well, the properties are being changed behind the scenes in the code. For example, let's look at it right now. The one that we're modifying is APDiv2. Okay, and let's look at its CSS properties. You can see that APDiv2 is positioned absolutely. And from the left and top, remember I told you had to have left and top properties? It says that we've moved it over 53 pixels from the left-hand side and 46 pixels from the top. We've given it a width and a height, 222 wide by 51 high, and a z-index of 1. We'll talk about z-index later. Now, let's change it. Let's move it manually. And if you look at the code behind the scenes, it's still positioned absolutely. But look, left, 317 pixels from the left and 18 from the top. We could also modify the width and height just by dragging any of the 8 handles here. And you can see that the width, 302, and the height have changed. So everything that we do out here through the interface is going to change something in the code. And in this case, when we're working with AP Elements, we are changing the cascading style sheet code. Now, let's look at the Property Inspector. When I select this AP element, you can see that some properties are exposed in the Property Inspector. Remember, the Property Inspector is context sensitive, so it changes depending on what you have selected. I know I tell you that a lot. I just want to make sure that you remember that. And here we have some properties. Look, left, 30 pixels. Top, 45. So from the left, 30 pixels from the left. From the top, 45 pixels down. Look, here's the width. And here's the height. It's 285 wide by 40 tall. Here's that z-index property that we saw. And what is this here? This is your ID. So you could change the ID name here if you wanted to. Okay, so those are the properties that will be important to you. Additionally, notice that there's a background image property, and you could browse for a background image. And you could also change the background color if you wanted to by clicking on this little color picker and choosing a color from the palette selector. Let's move on to step 6. In step 6, take a minute to look at this diagram. And I'm letting it refresh for you, I hope. Go back to the top. And what you should see here is that you have a layer on the header that encloses 3 other layers. And I call that layer LYR header. And inside of it, there's a nested layer. And I call that one LYR logo. So you can see it here. To the right, there's one called LYR Quick Nav. And then down at the bottom, still inside of this layer header, is LYR Header Nav. When you do this tutorial, and this is very important, you need to name your divisions exactly as I have here, or it won't work. Now, or you can change the name of your divisions. You just have to change your cascading style sheet code selectors to match them. Okay, so what I'm saying is I would just use the names that I provided for you. And it is case sensitive, so make sure you pay attention. When this says LYR and then capital H header, capital N nav, you need to pay attention to the case sensitivity there. We are going to draw with our AP elements or AP division tool all of these different layers, and I'll show you how quickly this can be done. Let me just look at this diagram so that I don't forget how I've done it. I always do, and I always mess it up, which is going to happen to some of you too, and you'll have to start over. Okay, so here's what I would do. When you start this tutorial, just get accustomed to using this layer or this AP element, AP division tool, and you may have to do it a couple of times before you get it right. Going back over to Dreamweaver, I've already drawn these two layers. I'm going to hit this little AP div, this little layer drawing tool again on the toolbar. And here's a trick. I can hold down my control key here. And the rule of thumb when you're creating this tutorial, always draw the largest container first and then draw the nested containers. And if we look over here under the AP Elements tab, we can see that we have this AP Div 1, and then inside of it, it's pretty obvious to see that there's an hierarchy. AP Div 2, 3, and 4 are nested within AP Div 1. So before we go on and draw more layers, why don't we name our layers? So let's refer back to the tutorial. In the first layer, the outermost one in the head is called LYR header. So I'm going to select that layer, the header layer. And Dreamweaver called it AP Div 1. We're going to change that right now in the property inspector. We're going to call it LYR header. Excuse me for jumping around. And just hit enter. The next one is LYR quick nav and LYR logo. So let's do those two. I select the logo one, LYR logo. And this one, what did I call it again? LYR quick nav. LYR quick nav. And this one I called LYR header nav. LYR header nav. Again, pay attention to the case sensitivity here. So now I have all of my layers up in this header area, named appropriately, and over here in the AP elements, I can see that the names have changed. And that's good. That's what I want. Let's go back to the tutorial. And I'm going to draw everything else that I see here now. Notice that I have a layer left nav all by itself. And then look at the nesting very carefully in the main content area. I'm going to do my best to do this correctly. I may have to bounce around, so be patient with me. I click on the AP Div tool, and I draw, oops, too fast, it scrolled too fast on me. I draw my layer out for the left nav. Now look, it's not exact, right? Nothing looks exactly like it should on this page. That's okay. I'm going to give you all of the property settings that you need to get everything on this page to look as it should. Well, let me show you something else you can do in Dreamweaver. I'm going to set the magnification here that I'm looking at. This is 100% magnification. I'm going to look at this page at 66% so I can see more of the page, so I can draw my layers a little bit better. And for now, just for a minute, I'm going to hide the properties panel. Okay, here go my layers. Ready? There's one. There. And let me look at the tutorial again, so I make sure that I do this right. I've got this big layer called layer main bottom that goes around everything in the bottom part of the main content area. Look. All five. That's not very pretty. It doesn't look that great at this point. But we can fix it. And also, let's look over here now at the AP Elements tab again, and you can see all of the nesting. So let's compare the way that this looks with our tutorial on the next step. So I'm showing you here what used to be called in the older Dreamweaver versions layers. It's now called AP Elements, the same tab we were looking at a minute ago. And you can see the nesting, and that looks similar to what we have over here in Dreamweaver. Now we just need to go and name all of our divisions. And we can do that with the property inspector. Okay, let's also talk about the CSS styles, the CSS styles panel. We know about this. We've been working with it for a couple of weeks. But here it is. It's right next to the AP Elements tab. And if I select all, I can expand all of the styles that I have. Now, after you give an ID for all of your different layers, they'll show up here correctly. And what you have is the ability to click on, for example, layer header, and change in the bottom half of the CSS styles panel all of the CSS properties that are already set, or you can add new properties. So you could do that right here. So for example, let's say that I wanted to increase the height of layer header. I could do that here. I've already got a height property set. Maybe I want it to be a little bit higher, like 125 pixels. Done. And by the way, the layer header looked like was this one up at the top. So I just made it a little bit taller. So we can set these properties here and change the number values, or over here in the real document we can grab the handles and we can change the way our divisions look, our width and height. Let's go back to the tutorial and on to step 8. This is the fun step. So I just showed you how you can change all of the properties. Let's do it. I'm going to split my screen here. So that we can see the properties and Dreamweaver. Okay. For this first division called layer header, here are all the properties that I want you to set. Here's how you do it. You go over to Dreamweaver. In the Style panel, Styles tab, You select layer header, and you can see it's positioned absolutely. Well, I've done that. It's positioned absolutely. It's left 18 pixels and top 13. And as I type in these values, I want you to watch the design interface, and you'll start seeing each of these divisions shifting into place where it's supposed to be. So let's do this one at a time. The left is 18 pixels. Left, 18 pixels. Top, 13 pixels. Width is 750 pixels, which is done. That's good. 750. Got lucky. Height is 103 pixels. Did you see it change in the interface? Your z-index is 3. And your visibility, visible. So you can add that property here. Visibility, visible. And so now I'm done with the layer header. Let's look at the next one, layer header nav. Let's move it to the top here. Layer header nav. I'm selecting it in the CSS styles panel. It is absolutely positioned. I want it to be left 0. So left 0. And width 750 pixels. Height 25 pixels. I got lucky there. Z-index of 0. Visibility, I want it to be visible, so I have to add that property. And border top width. So here are 3 properties that you've probably not seen before. Border top width, border top style, and border top color. Let me explain very quickly. Usually when we do a border, we're doing it all the way around a box. So you've seen border 1 pixel solid gray. You've seen that type of syntax before. You just haven't seen the idea that you can set individual borders. Maybe you have. I think we've had a tutorial where we've set individual borders on our CSS navigation list. But here's how you would do it. So border top width 1 pixel. I'm going to add a property. Border top width 1 pixel. I'm going to add another property, border top style. And I want it solid. And the third one, border, if I can type, top color. And you can type this number in. It's a hex value. So pound B BC 161C. And that is some type of red. Well, let's go look and see. In Dreamweaver, I'm going to maximize Dreamweaver. Actually, let me finish with this. Let's do the next one. Layer logo. So we're working on this next division. Layer logo. It's positioned absolutely. Left 0. Let's change that. Left 0. Top 0. Width 480. Height of 78. Z-index of 0. And visibility visible. So we'll add that property in. And let's do the final one here. It's called Quick Nav. Position absolute. Layer quick nav, position absolute. Left 480. Top 0. Width 195. Height 78. And Z-index of 0 and visibility visible. Now let's look at our product here. You can see as we select each of these individual divisions now in the interface that they look like they're more lined up with where they're supposed to be. And I'm thinking that I made a mistake here on this particular division, which is layer header. So I'm going to go back and look at layer header again. And it seems like the height is not right. So it should be 103. And I guess that's correct. It just looks weird in the interface. I'm going to click this live view button. I want to see if this is correct. All right. See how you can't see anything? This is a tracing image. Remember I told you the end user wouldn't be able to see your tracing image? So there's not much to look at right now. But in the interface, everything is where it should be. Now all that would be left for you to do is come in and add the text. Welcome to RedEnvelope, the place for unique and personalized gifts. And then add a red envelope image. And then add a gift box over here to this far right area. And you're going to have to work out how to do that, but I'll give you a hint. If you want to add this image, I would do it as a background image, and I would position it to the right. So it's called a gift box, I believe. Let's see if we downloaded that image. That may be it. Okay, so the way that I'm going to do that, and this is just for an example, I'm going to click on this div layer header. And what I will do, layer header, is, if I can see all my properties, I will add a property, and I'm going to add a background image. I'm going to browse for my image, and it's called gift box, and that looks like the one. I'm going to hit OK, and it repeats. So the next thing that I want to do is background repeat, no repeat, but it's over on the right hand side. So here's something we may or may not have seen before. There are some other properties that you can set, such as background position. Okay, and I'm going to say I want it on the top right, and it moves it right into place where it should be. Okay, so top right. So you have all these different areas. You can say top right, bottom left. Okay, so that you can position your background images within your divisions. Okay, what else do you need to know here? That's a lot of properties that you're going to have to set. Okay, so be willing to spend a little bit of time getting that done. And sometimes things don't work out exactly like you intended for them to, and you may have to back up. So here's what I would do. I would do a few of these, and then save, and then preview. Okay, just to make sure that everything looks the same as it should in the tutorial. Now I want to point something out that I've done that has caused a little bit of confusion for people working this tutorial. Starting down here on layer product 1, if you look at the symbol, it's a /*. It starts on the absolute position line, and then it ends here on the float left line. What this indicates is that from here to here, all of the highlighted text has been commented out. And let me tell you why I did that. There are 3 divisions here, product 1, product 2, and product 3 that I did that for. And my original thinking was, I'm going to absolutely position these divisions in the page. And then I decided, no, I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to use floats. So what I did is I floated them left. You can see that they're all floated to the left. Okay, and I set margins between them. So it was a little bit similar to the tutorial that we had done in the past called Floating an Image Thumbnail Gallery. The only similarity really is that they're left floated and they have margins between them. Okay, so let me say this all another way. All the highlighted text that you're seeing here, that's a comment. That CSS is not in force. It's commented out. The only thing that's mattering here really is the float left and the margin. In fact, you don't even really need this z-index invisibility visible. Okay, and I did that for product 2. So all of the highlighted text here that you see is commented out. And product 3 is the same way. All of the highlighted text you see here is commented out. All right, so don't get confused by that. So what does that mean for you? This right here is product 1, product 2, and product 3. These will be the corresponding layers. I just haven't named them yet. So what you'll have to do is go into the cascading style sheet code and make it look like you see in the tutorial where it's left floated and the margins are set, as you see here in my example, such as this line right here. Okay, back in the tutorial. After you're done with this step, and do this very carefully, you should get a product that looks similar to this one. If there's any difference, you need to go back into the tutorial and find out why. Do call me. Do email me. I want to hear from you if you're having problems. What I'm going to ask from you is that you put your files up to your server, and in the email, send me the link to the file, to your URL on your server, so that I can look at your page and we can try and find out where you've done a variation. Now I want to show you one more thing. There's a little image of a bat down here at the bottom. How would you do something like that? Well, I already showed you how you could position it, but there's another little trick. I would use a background image. I'll show you why. Let's just imagine that I'd already set all the properties here, and everything is lined up as it should be. I'll just do it manually here real quick. And in this particular division, I need to add a bat. So it's called division 14, and I know that because I can see it down here in the tag selector. That's what I have selected. So I go to my CSS Styles panel, and I choose App Division 14. And I want to add a property. And it is a background image. And I want to browse for that image, and I want to use the bat. And my bat image already has some orange in it. Okay, it repeats. So the next thing I do is I add a property for background to repeat so that it does not repeat. And then I can do a background position, top right. And now my bat's in place. And there's one more thing that I can do, and I think this is neat. Let me expand my properties inspector again. And if I select that division in the interface, I will get properties in the property inspector for that division. And here's background color. And if I click on the color picker, I get this little eyedropper, which means that I can sample colors. And I'm going to move over the orange of the bat and just click it. And now I've filled my division with that same orange as the bat has in its image. Pretty cool. And the advantage of doing this bat, creating this bat as a background image, is now I've got a background image, a background color. Y'all remember the Hicks 3D box model? I should show you that in a minute so you can understand why this works. But I've got a background color, a background image, and now I have just an empty division that I can type text on. I can add text to that division, and then I can style the text within that division. The reason I'm pointing this out, sorry for jumping, is that if I were to just throw an image right into this division, well, there's an image in that division, and it messes up the text and the whole flow. Right now, I'm just free to type text on top of everything that I see in the background color and the background image. And that's it. So at this point, you can see that you'd be using all of the background images that I provided for you. And on your tracing image here, you can see where all the text belongs. Let's put this back up to 100%. And you can see that over here on the left, in the left nav, it says Find Gifts By and Occasion. And then you have birthday, holiday, preview, new baby, and so on. This is your list menu. You're responsible for that. You're responsible for doing all the text up in the header at the top. And you're responsible for all of the main content text. All right, I'm going to open it up for questions right now and to ask you if there's anything else that you need to see again. Okay, James, were you able to find your absolutely positioned div tab? Okay, on a previous version of Dreamweaver, you still should have a button up here that says Common on it. And if you click that, you should be able to drop it down and you should get Layout Tools. And in those layout tools, there should be something that looks like this AP division, but it should say layer when you move over it. It's just a box with a little tab on the left top corner. See if you can find that. You're in CS4? Okay. In CS4, you don't have all these tools like Common, Layout, Forms, Data. You don't have those? Can't find them? Have you... Here it is. You can undock this palette, and it's called the Insert palette or Insert tab. So go to Window and choose Insert. Or, even better yet, try this. Go to Window, Workspace Layout, and choose Designer. And what that'll do is it'll reset all of your palettes to the designer look. Tell me, did that work? Still doesn't look like mine? Okay, just real quick, do you have Window Insert? If you can choose window insert, those are the tools that you should have. And it may look a little bit different. It may be in button form. I'll tell you what, James, let's you have my number, right? So you can call me after the session and we'll work that out, okay? Just call me on my number. All right, we'll do that. So I'm not sure what you're looking at. I know that you can preview, you can see those as tabs, and you can also probably see them as buttons. So we'll do that together, okay? See what other questions we have. All right. Lisbeth says, can you put the picture that is already divided into layer as a transparency? Lisbeth, clarify that question a little bit more. Okay, I guess I'm a little bit confused on your question. You're talking about the image and the fact that it's, what, are you talking about the bat? Specifically the bat? The entire image, the tracing image? Okay, what about the tracing image? Can you... Oh, okay. Can you put the picture that is already divided into layers as a transparency? Are you saying, can you just use that image in your site? Right? Is that what you mean? Okay. Yes, I suppose you could. There's nothing that says that you can't just use one big image in your site and put hotspots on it, but it's just not really the way that we design. And the reason for that is, remember, we have these divisions and containers, and we break up our pages into logical chunks of code, and we give it semantics with divisions and things like H1s. Okay? And so you really need to mark up your page so that it has all of those elements in it. Another good compelling reason to do that is for screen readers. Screen readers can't just come across an image and read the image, but they can read the text that's behind the scenes that's in your H1s and in your paragraphs. So that would be a good compelling reason not to create just a single image. Does that make sense? Plus, you know, it's more complicated and you can get paid more if you break your page up and do it in XHTML and CSS. I joke, but seriously, it does seem more complicated. Okay, other questions? While I'm waiting on a question, I do anticipate that some of you are going to have difficulties with this. It is not meant to be perplexing or super challenging where it stops you and you can't move forward. Okay? What it's intended to do is give you a good, well-rounded orientation to the Dreamweaver interface. You get to use the Styles panel. You get to use the AP elements. You get to use the property inspector. You're working with Dreamweaver in a visual way, more so than we ever have in the past, so that you can see what the tool can do for you and how it can generate code for you behind the scenes without you ever having to get in and type any code at all. Okay, and then it also is going to really make you take all of the text that you're supposed to put in and put it into lists and get it into the left nav as a list item that looks good. So you're going to have to go back and review your CSS lists. And then it'll show you how to use background images and reinforce the idea that you can have background images working in conjunction with background colors. So there are a lot of different things that you're pulling together here. And there will be some problems. Common problems that you'll find. you will not draw the layers correctly, a lot of you, the first time. And so when you start to add in all of the CSS properties and you're almost finished, you'll notice that your page doesn't look exactly like mine and like it should. All of the divisions won't be in the exact places that they're supposed to be. Okay, so what you need to do is just go back, look at that division, and make sure that you've drawn it in the right place. And sometimes, and I'm not kidding about this, you have to entirely start over. And I've had to do that. I created this tutorial, and it probably took me, I don't know, I work slowly, but between 5 and 10 hours just to get this simple tutorial done because, you know, I make mistakes too, and I wanted to write it in such a way that you could follow it. But I had to draw it several times and work with these divisions, and I made the same mistakes you'll probably make along the way. So be patient with this. Just give yourself a little bit of time. But if you get stuck, you feel like you're not moving forward or something just won't resolve, please just email or pick up the phone and call me. If you feel like I'm not emailing you fast enough, call me, leave a message. I may get back to you faster that way. Okay? You can also text me at that number. The number that I've given you is my cell phone, okay, on the syllabus. So feel free to do that. And I will not feel bothered at all by this if you call and email me. I'm not one of those instructors that gets upset about those types of things. Other options, I want to let you know, I had 3 people that showed up yesterday for the working lab, and I wish we had had more, but those 3, they really got a lot done. They started, you know, they were behind, they worked on their hilltop. I think they probably largely finished that, I'm hoping. They were working on the cell site, so I was able to answer some questions while they were there, and they were able to move on. So I'm going to say this. I encourage you, I'm going to probably run these Saturday sessions for the next 3 or 4 weeks until the end of class. So I encourage you all to be there if you can and if you think you need help. And those sessions will be from 2 o'clock on Saturday until 6 o'clock. So you have 4 hours of nothing but my time. And this is just my volunteer time because I want to make sure that you're succeeding in getting your questions answered. Okay? James, good. I'm glad you found it. I'll tell you what. I'd like to end the session now. I know Elizabeth still has a question. I'm going to hang out just for a minute and try and answer that one. But good luck with this tutorial this week, and really, seriously, call me if there's anything that I can do for you. Okay? So I'm going to stop the recording, and I'll take the last couple of questions that I have.